say what you will about Trump, if there's one thing you can't call the guy, is a boring president. I don't think anybody ever expected a Republican president to say something like, take the guns first, let's worry about the due process later. But that's what Trump did this week, speaking to a bunch of lawmakers at a bipartisan meeting to discuss the ongoing gun controversy in the United States. Trump was referring to the Parkland shooter, who authorities knew that the guy was not exactly on the level. There was a lot of red flags. There's no reason why somebody with that kind of background and so young to have such a massive collection of weapons. If I remember correctly, he had something like 10 weapons, and I mean, I think we can all agree that for a 19-year-old, that's at least excessive, if not outright crazy. So yeah, so at this meeting, that's what Trump said. He's basically saying, you know, there's a lot of problems with the way the law is structured, and in this case specifically, I would have preferred to just take the guns first. We'll worry about the law after. And the statement has confused a lot of people because on one hand, the guy is a Republican, so we all know how Republicans feel about the Second Amendment, and yes, on the other hand, he is a New York conservative. If Trump can even be said, can be called a conservative at all, a lot of people, some of the more cynical among us, would say that he just simply saw that that's the best way that he could have become president. He would never have been elected on a Democratic ticket, so he's play acting as a conservative. So it's complex. The Second Amendment situation is extremely complex from a legal standpoint. In the developed world, there's no nation like the United States where gun ownership is a constitutionally protected right. I'm from Brazil, and it used to be that we could carry weapons. It's not the case anymore, with some exceptions. I'm obviously glossing over a lot of details. I'm trying to make this as simple as I can, without giving wrong information, of course. But the way it is that even though Brazilians, because of the problems with public safety, there's a lot of crime there, a lot of Brazilians want to have the ability to own and bear arms, but we understand it's not a constitutional right. It's not the same thing as in a country like the United States. This has shaped the public discourse and, in fact, the legal doctrine for somewhat 200 years. So it's next to impossible to change that. If the Sandy Hook shooting, where Adam Lanza killed a whole bunch of grade school kids, if that didn't change, if that didn't prompt big enough change in the social discourse for action, I doubt anything could. Although in this case, because the victims in this instance are, you know, young teens, and they're very active in social media, they know how to get their voice heard for the most part. So we're seeing a lot of changes here, not at the legal level, which is an interesting change, right? Like, one thing we saw is that Walmart said that they're no longer selling weapons to people younger than 21 years old. And I wonder, like, I'm not sure how big a change that is, because unless every retailer does that, it's sort of meaningless, but I guess somebody has to lead the charge if we're going that route. The Second Amendment is something that I'm not American, right? I was born in Brazil, I'm a Canadian citizen, so I have a bird's eye view of how different cultures see weapons. In Brazil, like I mentioned, most Brazilians would like to be able to carry arms because there's so much violence, there's so much crime. I had my own cousin, he was robbed at gunpoint as he was pulling into his driveway, and the guy just took his car, took all these things. At gunpoint, he had a 9mm pointed to his face, and so this is a common occurrence. It's very rare for Brazilians to not know anybody who has never been mugged, right? Like, I myself have been mugged when I lived in Brazil. So I see the point of view of people who want the right to arm themselves for personal protection, to protect their homes, protect their property, their family, right? I see that. And at the same time, I live in Canada, and I know a lot of liberals, I know a lot of conservatives, but overall, the sentiment here is that we don't need weapons. Let the cops have the weapons. Having weapons doesn't improve your situation, your odds of surviving a violent encounter with an assailant. I'm not claiming that that's a fact. I just want to say this before you jump into my comments with a lot of statistics and facts and stories about people reacting to. I'm just saying that's the general sentiment I feel from my friends here in Canada. So it's complicated, right? Because the other thing is that the heart of the doctrine of the Second Amendment is that people need, obviously, again, I'm glossing over, I'm not a legal scholar, right? But my understanding from it is that the idea is that it's not so much for personal protection against criminals, like is the case in Brazil. That's the reason why Brazilians want weapons, to protect their car from a mugger or something like that, right? Come on, Windows, I'm doing a thing here. But the legal doctrine in the States, the basis for the Second Amendment, is that basically the people should have weapons so that they can keep the government in check. If people have no weapons, they can't rise up against tyranny. And that's basically the idea, right? I have a lot of problems with, like, it's one of those ideas, like dogma, theory, ideology. On paper, it's always great, right? But it's the implementation that never works out so great, right? Take communism, for example. Here's the problem I have with it, right? So, on one hand, imagine a situation that prompted people to take up arms and basically shoot up government representatives, being like lawmakers themselves, or fight against the police that was sent their way because they're rebelling, right? That's how it would be seen. If a group is saying, what the government is doing here is tyrannical and it's unjust, we gotta take up arms and we gotta shoot them up, right? If that were to ever happen, we would not, like the public at large, we would not see that as heroism. We would not see that as somebody standing up to their rights. We'd see that as terrorism. If anybody, for whatever reason, because interpretations of what's unjust, what's unfair, are never gonna be consistent across the board. Let's take the recent events, the recent cases where police shot and killed unarmed black men, right? Regardless of how you feel about the situation, I'm not going to go into the specifics and the morality of it. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is this. To some people, that could be interpreted as government tyranny that prompts armed response, right? The police have weapons. They're killing people who are unarmed. The police represent the government. That's the government basically killing innocent people for no reason, right? Again, I don't want to go into the specifics. That's not what this video is about. All I'm saying is this. The optics of picking up a weapon and firing back on what you perceive as tyrannical is not going to be shared by everybody else. And to everybody else, that's going to look like terrorism. That's the biggest problem I have with that. We have the people who defend the Second Amendment have this idealized notion that if that were ever necessary, these people would be seen as the heroes, patriots, right? They're picking up the guns and they're shooting up whoever's coming. The government sending SWAT teams or FBI teams or whatever, and they're fighting back against injustice. This is not how that would be perceived today. I promise you that. We are seeing the Revolutionary War with the hindsight of 200 years of history books that have been written since by the people who won. And that's why we see that as like the righteous took up arms to fight against tyrannical government. If that happened today, if some dude, imagine you open up CNN or whatever is your news source of choice, and you open up and you see the news about this group that took up arms and they're declaring that whatever this branch of government did is tyrannical and they're shooting up the place. You would not see that as heroism. And that's the fundamental problem I have with this idea that people are just going to be able to take guns and fight the government. That's not how we would read the situation. We would see these people as terrorists, not as heroes, right? So that's problem number one. The other problem is this idea that the guy with a Glock 19 or an M16, an AR-15, could fight the military might of the United States, right? And I understand the value of guerrilla warfare. I've heard the arguments in that sense, like, you know, we weren't able to take over all of Afghanistan or all of Iraq or all of Vietnam for that matter, because armed people that know the local lay of the land and everything, they are usually better than the oppressors and the people who are trying to invade their communities. Fair enough, I get that, but I still am not convinced that the United States having access to Predator drones and cruise ships and cruise missiles and the combined military might of the United States, we're talking the country that spends the most in this field out of every other nation in the world. If I were an American, right, and let's say I'm a big guy on the Second Amendment and I have my guns and everything and I believe in the Constitution and all that, and I'm not saying this to be dismissive, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, right? I don't think I'm not that confident in my skill as a survivalist, right, and as somebody who understands their guns and everything like that. I'm not confident enough that the entire network, the military and the intelligence network that the United States has paid for the last couple of decades, I don't think that or my 10 closest survivalist friends, I don't think that we could even put a dent on that. Maybe I'm being cynical, I'm being pessimistic, maybe I'm not fully appreciating the power of guerrilla warfare, right? I'm sorry, these guys sit in rooms in Langley and they're flying Predator drones that dispense death from above, and they know everything about you. They can track your phone calls, your correspondence, they can read your emails, they know who you're associated with, they know everything about you, and they can do And they can do with that information basically whatever they want. I don't think me having an AR-15 can really present a challenge to people, to a government, to a state that has grown to such a size that they're able to conduct warfare on the other side of the planet. Honestly, maybe I'm just not that confident in my own skill as a revolutionary, but I doubt anybody could seriously fight the United States government. I'm sorry. That being said, I don't want to be dismissive of the Constitution. I'm not saying here get rid of all the guns. I'm just saying I get the purpose, I get the theory of the Second Amendment. I doubt that this would work that way, the way that the forefathers envisioned. Again, I'm not a legal scholar, so to say that to try to say like, oh, that's not how the forefathers felt when they were writing it, I know that is a little, that's pretentious on me, so I own up to it, okay? But I want to know how you feel about this. I have a lot of American subscribers, I have a lot of Canadian subscribers, I have a lot of Brazilian subscribers to this channel, right? That's the beauty of doing an English channel. I have a channel where I do videos in Portuguese, right, for my main audience, and I know that whenever I do videos in the channel, I'm only speaking to Brazilians. On this other channel here, I know that I'm speaking to the entire world, which is interesting because it allows me access to a lot of different perspectives. Because the kind of comments that I hear from Brazilians, they're very different from the comments I hear from Americans and Canadians, for instance, so I'm getting a better worldview. I feel here, but let me know how you feel. Like I want to hear the arguments from the people who are for the Second Amendment and the people who are against it. Let me know in the comments below. And that's all the time I have for today. I gotta get back to work. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. In case you're new here, I'm giving away a new 2DS XL in the next 30 days. So if you're not subscribed yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm gonna leave the link to the giveaway in the description as always. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.